Hey, I'm Josh Yeager, and my business partner, David Romako, is here today. We are the co-founders of Bright Brothers Strategy Group. David, if you want to advance the slides, I'm going to run through the first couple really quickly. We were invited back by the group in downtown Fort Collins to kind of talk through the process of what we've been working on over the last year, maybe year and a half. Bright Brothers is a strategic consultancy in Philly, where I am. David and the rest of the team are out in Arizona, but we work with downtowns, districts, and destination marketing organizations all around the country. We have both the strategy group, where we work on strategic initiatives. We also have a full service agency that underpins what we do. And you can see here some of the logos of some of the other downtowns that we have worked with fairly recently. Last year, the team over there hired us for a pivotal 2-point process leading into the new website launch, or website development and launch, which just launched, I think, last week. Looks fantastic. And we used a particular process to do this, and it's all based off of personas. So I'll kind of talk a little bit about the methodology. We have a specific methodology that we use called POSTER, and this is not proprietary to us. If you're in marketing, you're probably familiar with this. It's people, objectives, strategies, tactics, and results. We start with people. Who are our target audiences? What are their needs and wants? What are their barriers to entry? Why do they want to engage with you or not engage with you? We need to understand everything that we can about the target audience. Then we look at our objectives. What are we trying to accomplish as an organization? From there, you develop the strategy, which is the what, that answers the quantifiable objectives, that meets the needs and wants of the people you're targeting. T is tactics, tools, technologies. So anything like Facebook or Facebook ads would be a specific tactic. Tactics all are the how, that answer the what of the strategy, that meet your objectives, that meet the needs and wants of your target audiences. Lastly is results. So we quantify metrics upfront, and that way we know if we're on pace to meet our goals, surpass our goals. We know how we're doing with our campaigns or our programming. We start this process with personas. David, if you want to go to the next slide. Personas are really important because different people have different needs. Different people have different motivators. They have barriers to entry. What might be important to one person may not be important to somebody else. So what attracts one person to downtown may actually be something somebody else doesn't even want to deal with. Good example here, restaurants with kids. If I'm a parent, I want to find a family-friendly restaurant that has kids menu. But if I'm a younger person, I might not want a baby screaming when they're sitting next to me and I'm trying to have dinner. So there are different needs that different people have, and the more we can understand those, the better we can speak directly and connect with those people. Another reason why personas, when you try to be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. And we say this a lot because when we meet with downtowns, a lot of times we'll say, who do you want downtown? And we'll say, everybody. We're like, well, you really don't want everybody downtown. You probably don't have the resources to get everybody downtown. You probably don't have the budgets to get everybody downtown. So it's very important that you really target and identify who is it that you do want downtown? What are you trying to do for them? How do they meet your needs? How do you meet their needs? And that makes for more successful marketing, communications, and programming. I'm going to go into the process a little bit of how we develop the personas. And the personas were just the first step, and I'll get into how this leads into how we use them. But the process that we went through with the team at downtown Fort Collins, we kicked off. We did qualitative intake. And some of you folks in the room today, I think even were on some of our intake calls. We met with business leaders and stakeholders from the community, business owners, and talked about who are the types of people that we do want downtown. What do we know about them? How do we connect with them? And took a whole lot of information back from our intake sessions. That was all qualitative. The next phase is research and analysis. And there we use a lot of data inputs. Then in phase 3, we marry the qualitative with the quantitative to create the persona. We flesh them out, we write the narratives, we finalize the personas. I'm going to dive into this process a little bit deeper on the next slide. So what the process looks like, the qualitative feedback that you see on the left, that was from our intake sessions. So we listened to you guys. We asked a lot of questions of the different business owners and stakeholders and ratepayers in the room about who is important for us to see downtown, who's coming downtown now, who's not coming downtown, and why. Why would we want them downtown? Are there gap personas that we're not meeting today? We know they're out there and we'd love to have them come down and support our programming and activities. Well, why aren't they coming? We got a lot of really great qualitative feedback. After that, the next section is data inputs. This is all research. And one of the biggest components of that research is a consumer intercept survey that we launched with the DDA team, and we got a phenomenal amount of feedback. That research is also augmented then with other data inputs and data indicators. We looked at Google Analytics. We looked at your social insights. We also looked at information and trends from other third-party sources like the Small Business Association, Administration, Pew Charitable Trust, Brookings Institute, big think tanks and big trend watchers that are well-funded and give us a lot of information about what's going on in the States, as well as the International Downtown Association itself, which is the industry organization that organizations like the DDA are members of, which is how we all met and how we ended up working together. So we take both the qualitative, quantitative, marry them together. On the next page, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Intercept survey. Some of you may remember this. Some of you may have helped us get the word out. We had asked merchants and ratepayers to please share this within your e-blasts, post it to social. We made a suite of graphics to have people go to the survey and fill it out. We got phenomenal response. Your downtown is so engaged. And we saw this from the beginning when we were doing our intake sessions. So much great positive energy. It is such an amazing, tight-knit community. And we really loved the amount of feedback we got. Our survey in particular had nearly 900 responses, which is pretty high considering that the length of time that it was open. But we got a lot of really good quality feedback. And so that survey ends up informing us in different areas throughout the persona development process. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But some of the things that we learned and gleaned on the next page, we asked people, what does downtown represent to you? What do you like about it? We heard all kinds of things, like we like it because it's artsy. We like it because it's clean, it's wholesome, it's family friendly, it's creative, it's unique, it's successful. These voices bubble up in different amounts, and we're able to take data to better understand. So if we wanted to zero in on a 30-something Asian female that is not employed full-time and understand what do women in that decile think about downtown, we can kind of hone in through this data by segmenting and looking at it. So the individual voices from the community really powered a lot of what we put together with your personas. On the next slide, all right, so we're going to dive into your personas. I'm assuming at this point you guys have probably all seen them, but if not, there are digital copies available, and I'm sure the folks at the org can share them with you. We have digital, and then we print them as well. They're 4-sided cardboard folders. And so I wanted to break down kind of the anatomy of a persona, because we understand that there were a lot of questions about, well, what is this? This is great. There's Vicky Chow, but what does that mean? What does she mean to us? Each section of the persona is specifically laid out to indicate certain things. So I'm going to kind of take you through the anatomy of the persona. I do want to kind of mention this. When we develop the personas, we develop them specifically for a place management organization. We developed these for downtown Fort Collins. So they're not necessarily, while they may be directionally informational or directionally offer good information for your business, they weren't necessarily created specifically for a restaurant or a hotel or a service provider downtown. You can look at them, you can glean certain things, and I'm going to kind of go through and show you what is what and what means what within them. So on the first page, when you look at a folder, you'll open it, you have their name. That's kind of self-explanatory. You have a subhead. That kind of gives you an indication of their personality or their purpose or their relationship to the district. Then we get into the narrative. And this is the creative side of what we heard from the qualitative intake and from the Intercept survey. So the narrative really tells the backstory of who is this person and what is their relationship to the district. What is their daily life like? What are they doing? Where do they consume media? that type of thing. So the narrative runs through the rest of the folder. There's a photo, so you'll see what this person looks like. And then there's a quote. The quote I love because it's really one of the most telling pieces of the persona, because it kind of sums up the tone of voice that you can use with the persona. It conveys a component of their personality. It's them as if they were speaking to a friend or somebody on the street. So the quote is very good from a tone of voice perspective. So let's say you're sitting down to write copy caption for an Instagram post and you were targeting Vicky. You can see how Vicky speaks, so you can speak to her in her own terms. On the next slide, on page 2, kind of going through what you see here. Again, we have a visual with the photo. The narrative continues over here, and then we get into demographic information. So this is kind of very straightforward stuff: age, occupation, housing type, location, household income, which is pretty telling when you're doing programming or developing a campaign. Obviously, for households with multiple people, it's combined. We have a lifestyle photo. This is a photo that's not necessarily of the person, but it's usually indicative of something about their lifestyle or something you might find if you were hanging out with them. For example, we loved that coffee mug out in the forest and thought, like, this is something that Vicky would have, a cool mug like that. Then we get into technographics and media consumption. Technographics are really indicative of how the person relates to technology. What platforms are they on? Which social media platforms do they use? Which is very important if you're trying to connect, and I'll give an example of that later. We look at other media that influences them, and then we look at local influences. And we call this influences. Many of them are media in particular that the persona is consuming. So if you wanted to connect with them, you can see what they're reading, and then potentially do an advertisement, write an article, get advertorial, connect with that person knowing that your target audience is going to consume that media. On the next page, page 3, here we get into goals, pain points, and values. And this is really important to understand this person. What are they trying to accomplish with downtown? What are their pain points? What do they not like about coming downtown? Of course, we heard parking and traffic and things like that. There are things that people will gripe about because it's part of the experience of coming downtown. But there are ways that we can overcome that through smart communications, content strategy, etc. Values, what's important to them. All of this information about goals, pain points, and values, those came directly from the Intercept survey. We have another photo. We have special moments. These are really kind of like really special things that the person would celebrate or that are important to them throughout the year. And then we have activities. Those are the more pedestrian things that they would do every week, things that they engage in. Do they eat out? Are they active lifestyle? Are they outdoors? Do they go to the gym? Do they go to concerts? This helps you understand where that person is and how to connect with them. And then lastly, on the final page, we have a section called Vital. And this is typically a stat or some type of supporting documentation or something that came to the forefront in research paired with a statistic or a trend that we see going on. It's something that's vital about that person. We have another photo. Then we have love. I love downtown because, and I want to prioritize. Those things, again, came from the Intercept survey. So we can see, like for Vicky, she likes it because it's unique, artsy, and friendly downtown. We understand what she wants to prioritize. Bike lanes are important to her. Next section, advertising. So I mentioned influences earlier. Advertising really goes into how do we advertise to Vicky. So let's say, for example, we're having a dine around event and we want Vicky to come down for it. Advertising will explain to you how and where to connect with that person. Things that you should be aware of, things that you should avoid, what types of messaging work, what types of communications. A lot of it gets very granular and tactical, but it'll tell you exactly how to connect with that person. We have brands, and this is gleaned from analytics and localized data. It's indicative of either local and national brands that the person would shop with or bond with. But in a consumer society like we live in, people identify with brands because they're extensions of their personality. If you say I'm a Trader Joe's shopper, that may mean one thing. If you say I'm a Walmart shopper, that may mean something else. So brands are always good to kind of understand the mentality of the person as well as socioeconomic status. And then insights, we go into, this goes deeper than just the advertising and the other information. It really talks about the personality, what's important to them, what are triggers, what to avoid, how to connect with them. So each persona packet, 4 pages. So when we sit down to develop a campaign or programming, you will know how to connect with them. I'll go into deeper detail about that in a minute. On the next slide, you'll see on the next 2 pages, we break down an overall overview of the 10 personas that we develop. I'm going to do a deep dive on each one of these to explain to you guys why they're important to us and what they mean to us. But you'll see we have a mix of folks, from singles to couples to non-traditional couples, LGBTQ. We have families, we have moms, we have retirees, empty nesters. You kind of have a broad mix of folks. On the next, on that page, you'll see we have more families, we have stakeholders, community members, we have business owners, we have a student, and we have Vicky. I'll go into Vicky a little bit more because she's my favorite. On the next slide, I'm going to start going into who are the people in your neighborhood. So those 10, I'm going to dive into each one and kind of give you an overview of who these folks are and why they're important to us. This is because when we sit down, or when Downtown Fort Collins sits down to either develop a campaign or develop new programming, or if they want to do fundraising, or they're developing a fam tour, anything that the organization wants to do, they will sit down and pull out 3 or 4 of these personas. We're never creating campaigns or programming for all 10 of them. You're never trying to speak to all 10 of them at once, which goes back to the when you try to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to no one. So if you, in the process, using poster process, narrow it down to no more than 4 personas, you can really isolate and target and connect with folks, and it increases your media efficiency. It targets your ad buys. I'm going to talk about these folks now. The first persona that we have are Chris and Mike. They're experiential dog dad dinks, which is a mouthful. So if you're not familiar with dinks, dinks are double income, no kids, which is what these 2 represent. They're dinks first and foremost. Secondly, they're pet parents. There are a lot of folks who don't have biological children, but are pet parents. It's a massive trend. It's massive moneymaker. And if you own a pet yourself, you know you are a parent to them. They're part of your family. This couple has higher than average combined household income. They own a single family home nearby. They're tourism net promoters. So when you look at Vicky's story, Vicky, who does rideshare, she drives for Lyft, picked up some friends of theirs from the Armstrong Hotel, drove them out to their house. All of these narratives combine into an ecosystem with these stories. But these guys are tourism net promoters because they have a lot of friends from Denver, where they moved from, that come up on the weekends and hang out in Fort Collins. And these guys are showing them around. They're drinking beer. They should be considered for programming for dog-friendly events, non-family oriented events and activations. Not meaning that they're anti-family, but the family-friendly stuff is not necessarily going to speak to a single couple with a dog. They're great for F&B centric promotion. So if you're a bar or restaurant, these guys love beer. They love dine-arounds. They love restaurant week. They're stable. They're nicely affluent. They spend money at local businesses. They can be a catalyst for encouraging other LGBTQ visitors, as well as potential community members, home buyers, or driving event participants. If you have something going on a weekend, they have friends coming up from Denver, they're probably going to come into town and check it out. The next persona group is Jessica Leffler. She's feeling left out lately. Jessica lives nearby, but is still commuting into downtown Fort Collins. She works in healthcare. A lot of her former colleagues, coworkers, and the general foot traffic that we used to see downtown during the day are now working from home. Jessica is not. She's still coming downtown. So she's feeling kind of left out because she sees other people going out and running errands during the day, or running to grab a coffee in the middle of the day, and she's still sitting at her desk. But this type of folk is extremely valuable to downtowns because of their foot traffic. They're the ones that are still coming downtown, and their spend is crucial with local businesses. Jessica offers us the opportunity to connect with the regional folks that can be advocates for downtown, and we want her to come back downtown and bring her family downtown for events and programming. The next persona is Melissa and Amanda Maurer. They're relocation-driven middle-class visitors. So these are folks from Chicago that are in town. The daughter, Amanda, is going to go to school in Fort Collins. Her mom doesn't really want her to fly the nest and leave the coop. She's moving too. But they wanted to come and check out the town. They had a couple different universities they were looking at. So they decided to take a trip to Fort Collins. These folks are farther up in the funnel, but will most likely be your neighbors soon. So they represent a group of folks that you'll see a lot of times when the new school year starts, during move-in or move-out weekends. They represent a viable feeder market for relocation. They're physically active. They're super outdoorsy. They love how creative and progressive downtown is. They're soon going to be your neighbors. And so if we look at them at the onset of their customer journey, we can start creating content or programming towards them. Or you can wait until they're in town and they're newly your neighbors and welcome them to town. Either way, you're going to see a lot of Melissa and Amandas around town during the course of the year. Next up is a local family, the Nelsons. They're a nearby middle-class family. These guys are kind of the backbone of many communities. The Nelsons have multiple kids. Families are one of the most coveted segments for marketers. So any of the marketers in the room know this. By proxy, because they are so coveted, they're more expensive to reach, especially with paid social ads. Like I said, they're the backbone of many communities. They're important to us because they're advocates for downtown. They supply foot traffic. They're local. They spend locally. They participate in community-driven events. And as locals who live in town, they're much more likely to come out for things because they don't have to drive into downtown. They can literally walk or jump on the trolley and come into town. They will also attract other families. So let's say they're at a play date. Oh, what are you guys doing this weekend? Oh, there's the summer sale going on. Okay, great. Let's meet up and bring the kids, and then we'll hang out at the splash pad. Perfect. They're going to attract other families. They're important to us. They don't have a massive household income, but they will bring other families, like I said, in their crucial programming, like festivals, museums and cultural attractions, parks and rec programming, as well as community programming. Programs like the trolley, gift card program, placemaking activations like the pianos or the splash pad. This is who this is for. They play an outsized role in your content strategy as well. So everything from website content to e-blasts to social media and advertising buys, we're probably going to be thinking about the Nelsons pretty frequently. Next up, we have Robin and Bob Fick. They are empty nesters living their best life. So these folks were not from here originally. They have ties to Fort Collins. They had a successful business. The kids are out of the house, all grown up. They sold their business and they're moving downtown. There's an outsized bell curve at the top of our population hourglass right now with boomers, and you all know this, but their associated investments in household income also play a major impact for downtowns. And this is especially true for the Thicks in Colorado. Colorado in particular, you have nearly triple the planned retirement averages in the coming years. I think the estimate that we included was pulled from a data source, but the national average was somewhere in the 21 to 25 range, I believe, and Colorado is looking about 76%. You have a lot of boomers moving to town. I'm sure you've seen this around town with people moving in. These folks are great, though. We absolutely love them. They've got money to spend. They're hungry for programming. They're hungry for events. They're hungry for specials. If you're a bar or restaurant, especially if you have wine, these guys are going to be a cornerstone persona for you. And as boomers age in place, you're likely to see increasingly more of them around town. Their needs are going to impact our society as a overall in an outsized way in everything from ADA compliance to investment banking to business acceleration to even the design of buildings themselves, design of housing. The Thicks are there to stay, and they are empty nesting in downtown Fort Collins. Our next persona is the Monroes. This is an outdoorsy dendrite family. So on the surface, they may seem really similar to the Nelsons, but they're not. They're from Denver. They're up visiting on vacation. So they represent a few things for the district. They represent your top feeder market. And unlike Chris and Mike, the Dinks that we saw, though their friends were just coming up for the weekend, these guys are coming up for a longer stay. They're an active family, and they have a greater monetary impact on Fort Collins because they've got 4 mouths to feed and entertain. They have a longer stay, more activities, more attractions where they're going to spend money, more shops where they're going to spend money. They could be seen as potential relocations at the very tip top of the funnel, but more so we want to look at them as a typical tourist family. And with most families, Jennifer, the mother, makes the majority of the decisions on how the household is going to spend its time, where they're going to spend their money. She's a gatekeeper that we need to influence. And by providing outstanding experiences while they're in town, you're ensuring the additional future revenues and tax assessments should they ever decide to move to Fort Collins. It's super attractive to them. But they're really indicative of social learning and interaction with decision-making moms. A lot of that decision-making is taking place online. And this is an interesting trend that we've seen for a while now. And then Google has really been validating this. Millennials and Gen Z are moving away from traditional search. So from a marketing perspective, the last couple of decades, it's been search engine marketing, search. Google seeing younger deciles leave that, and they're searching on Instagram and they're searching on TikTok. So they're making purchase decisions based on information that they're finding on social platforms. This is important for us to know because if we want to connect with them or we want to reach them, we may want to put more of our eggs in the basket of TikTok or Instagram as opposed to search engine optimization on a website. There are major considerations for the district social and content strategies because of the way they search. They're going to spend a lot of money in town, and you're really going to love that family. Next up on the list, we have Denise Lantana. She's the godmother of Grub. So even though Denise lives in Stover, she's a critical stakeholder for downtown because she's a tenured business owner. She represents ratepayers and stakeholders like yourselves. She's a crucial part of the business community, but her influence outweighs many individual locals because she's an employer. She's got staff. She pays local taxes. She's a big advocate for DEI. And she knows that that's imperative for fostering a vibrant business community. Denise gives back in spades to the community. And as an entrepreneur, she's a backbone of the economy locally. And Denise and her business and her associated online reputation are part of the draw for visitors and tourists. So when Denise's restaurant has really good social content, that is part of what the Monroes are going to see when they're searching hashtags like downtown Fort Collins or things to do in downtown Fort Collins. It all plays together, but she's one of the reasons that your locals love to love local. She represents that indie restaurant and that indie business that everyone has rallied around for decades. She also helps mentor other local business leaders, newer business leaders. So she's a community pillar that we want to celebrate. And as a tenured business operator, she's responsible for a lot of the positive type of growth that you've seen in Fort Collins over the last couple of decades. By contrast, on the next page, we're going to meet Patty Phelps. And Patty is, she's a ladybug landing in FOCO. Patty already has a business in another town in Colorado. So she may on the surface seem like a different flavor of Denise Lantana, but she's not. The similarities are kind of superficial. Both women are in business, both employ folks locally, but Patty is critically different in that she represents the opportunity for Fort Collins in growing the local base and attracting unique and independent businesses, in particular retail. And while you guys have a very strong local retail presence, that isn't the case in many places in the United States right now. Commercial leases are under significant strain and poised to be a potential downfall in our economy. I was reading an article the other day that was saying commercial leases are probably going to be the next big banking crisis. And we all know what's going on with retail. We all know about the shift to online with retail. So when you have independent and wildly supported retail in your downtown, you need to do everything that you can to keep them. And Patty is exactly that type of person. Patty's also the reason that you have programs like the Downtown Dollars program, and she provides a critical missing component that many downtowns are struggling to attract today. So support her, and word will spread about the nurturing business community in downtown Fort Collins. So we want more Patty Phelps moving into downtown and opening their second locations there, third locations, fourth locations. Next up, we have Maddie Enright. Maddie's a student at the university. College towns are their own unique beasts. And even though it may seem somewhat temporary and that there's a revolving student population, the economies of college towns all fall into their own vertical within the UPMO universe, in the urban place management universe. So I was talking about IDA earlier, the International Downtown Association. College towns work differently because of the population ebbing and flowing. The Madisons of the world in college towns are absolutely important to our businesses. They're critical for the local economy. Maddie offers us the opportunity to ingratiate a local and future potential advocate. Her pay and her need for benefits are significantly lower. They have lower overhead than, say, an adult who needs childcare benefits and insurance. Maddie's also a driver in activities that don't involve alcohol consumption. And so we may think, oh, these are just kids, they're under 21, they can't drink, they don't have any money to spend. They definitely have money to spend, and they are spending money in your downtown. But technically, legally, they're not allowed to purchase alcohol. So when we have things like wine walks or wine nights or beer busts, it's not for the Maddies. We need to program for the Maddies of the world. And even though she's on a budget, she does spend money. But Maddie also is important to us because she generates social content, and like the stuff that Mrs. Monroe, the family, might see. She also works at a local restaurant. And in her narrative, we have her serving Amanda Maurer and making recommendations about the downtown. She is sharing goodwill. She's already an advocate for your downtown. So obviously you want to keep her in your good graces as a net promoter for the city. Maddie is an investment in Fort Collins' future, in its reputation, and in its online presence. Next up is Vicky Chow. So Vicky, I mentioned, is my favorite persona that we did for you guys. I love all of them. Vicky is just so much fun. If you read her narrative, it's like, I want to be friends with her. She's awesome. She's down to earth. She's relaxed. She has that easygoing Colorado vibe. And she very much represents the missing middle that we've been hearing a lot about recently. She is an advocate for your town. She's a first face ambassador for many people. So like the Dinks had friends come to town. She picked them up in their Lyft and drove them out to the Dinks house. She was one of the first faces and representatives of downtown that you see. She also works at a local restaurant. So she's also a first face ambassador serving dinner and drinks. She patronizes budget-friendly locales, but she also shares the inside scoop with her customers. When they say, where's the best burrito? Or where's the best place to go? Or, you know, I want to check out the Poudre River. Vicky is the one who is sharing that information. So she's kind of like a mini concierge in and unto herself. She's a wage worker and a gig worker. So whereas some of the other residents that we've looked at were holding down full-time jobs, Vicky's got a couple of jobs. And eventually she wants to buy a house and settle down and get a dog of her own. So she represents the future for downtown Fort Collins in a lot of ways, but she also represents a significant portion of younger workers. She's a pivotal persona for us to program for. I was looking at some stats when I was putting this together. Nearly 1/5 of the US workforce right now is made up of gig workers. 30% of younger US adults have made money through gig work at some point. Half of gig workers have full-time jobs as well. The 1099 contractors of the world actually file on average more money than W-2 employees. And flexibility and supplemental income are one of the biggest reasons why people take up gig work. So Vicky's fun, she's cool, she's got a couple of jobs, she's got fingers in every pie. She is quintessentially Colorado in her attitudes, opinions, and behaviors. So that was kind of a quick run through of the 10 personas. Now I'm going to kind of talk about how we use them. So the personas in particular, And we have districts that have done all kinds of things. I'm going to show you some of the things you guys have done, and then we're going to talk about some of the stuff that other districts have done. But you can use them for everything from strategic planning, merchant support programs, marketing and communications, campaigns and media buying, website imagery, copy, tone of voice, functionality, social profile development and content strategy, but also the development of community programs, economic development, fam tours, fundraising, trade shows, and more. It all depends on how you're going to use them. And again, like I said, we developed these for a place-based organization, but they can be used in myriad different ways. So how to use your personas. On the next page, first and foremost, you guys probably recognize this because it's brand new and hopefully you've all seen it. This is the new website that launched for downtown Fort Collins. It was developed by an associate of ours named called Geocentric. Phenomenal, kind of the gold standard within the international downtown community as far as website development, because every piece of functionality was built specifically to support a downtown and their needs, as opposed to just a random WordPress site or some kind of WYSIWYG website builder. This website has the directories, the imagery, the events calendars, everything that you would need for a downtown. But what we did to make this happen, and Dave, if you want to go to the next page, we developed your personas. Then those personas were used to develop a content and asset strategy for the new website build. So we isolated 4 of the personas that we thought were the most viable and relevant, and we put together a strategic document that helped drive the development of the new website. That included quantifiable metrics for planning, said this is how we need to build the site. This is how we need to build the pages. This is the type of content that we want on the pages. This is the type of functionality that we want on the pages. And here's how you will measure your success. So as things progress and the new website is a quarter old, half a year old, a year old, the team at DDA can go back and look and say, okay, we're pacing really well. We increased our email signups by 3,000% or whatever the number was that we planned for. But they can see because they have clear goals, metrics, and KPIs for measuring how they're doing. On the next page, you'll also see I pulled this matrix directly from that strategy document that we put together. But this is just one example of how we can use the personas to better understand how we should allocate our resources or where we need to develop content, what is important, what's not. So you'll see the majority of the profiles that we built, the personas that we built, most of them use Facebook. A lot of them use Instagram. Some of them are on TikTok. Nobody on here is using Twitter or X. Nobody on here is using other things. We know if we have a finite amount of time, we have a finite amount of resources, we can only do so much in one day. Where are we going to put, which basket are we going to put our eggs in? This type of matrix will help us understand how to do that. I wanted to show you guys some examples of some things that some other districts have done. You saw all those logos of downtowns that we've worked with. These are just a couple examples of different ways. All of these clients we've developed personas for. All of these clients have adopted the poster process and they use it for planning of everything. But case in point, downtown Norfolk in Virginia, they restructured the restaurant week using their personas. And during the pandemic, they still held their restaurant week. They got maximum results. They saved 80% of their annual advertising budget by shifting to digital. We did that with their personas. And then during the pandemic, they were the #1 market in the country, according to Star Reporting, for hotel occupancy, average ADR, and RevPAR. And that was in the middle of a pandemic because we developed a very smart campaign using their personas and using their data and analytics. Downtown Tempe in Arizona has used their personas to develop dozens and dozens of events and activations. All of their marketing materials over the last decade have been developed using these. Downtown Austin Alliance used ours to develop a new positioning campaign based on the personas. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of downtowns were like, we need to welcome people back. And we were like, okay, let's look at how we do that. So they use that to put together the positioning campaign. Downtown San Francisco has used their personas for all sorts of things, from their new visual identity, their branding, their website, their streetscape and enhancements, their merchant support, their events and activations, but in particular, They've launched the largest holiday projection mapping light show festival in the country. It has taken place the last 2 Decembers, 10-day runs each. In the first year, they were able to drive over $2 million in economic impact during a 10-day run. And last year, over $3 million in economic impact for the ratepayers and stakeholders with this festival. So over $5 million collectively, because we used personas to target the campaign development, the media buys, the advertising, the content. All of that drove all of this, which then ultimately supported their ratepayers and the people running businesses within their district. It's really phenomenal. IDA, the parent org for our industry, has hired us several times and used the personas just like Downtown Fort Collins did for their website build, their content strategy, social strategy, and more. I don't want to sit here and bloviate. I wanted to show you, though, these personas can be used in multiple different ways. On the next page, you'll see just some examples from downtown San Francisco. We've used the personas to develop cross-street banners, street pole banners, really crafty, fun campaign with their big bellies. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, that type of solar-powered trash can is called a big belly. We can wrap those. So we did some really fun campaigns that used things that tapped into both their history, which we knew was important to their tourists, but also really snarky messaging, like we did an entire campaign that said, give us your trash, we can take it. All these puns and jokes around trash to keep people from littering on the streets. Every district uses them in different ways. If you look at the next page, this is a quote from Allison Shashok. She is actually, she's the VP of Membership and Marketing at IDA, and they've used our personas in numerous different ways. So downtown Fort Collins is also now positioned to use these personas in multiple ways. You've already seen how it drove the website, but now the team there can continue to use it on, and they have been using it. They've adopted them and have used the persona for multiple things, but these personas last long into the future. Like I said, we have clients that have used them for a decade, and I think that these will be viable tool for downtown Fort Collins for the next decade to come as well. That kind of wraps our prezo, but we are sure that you guys have questions. So I want to know, what do you guys want to know during the question and answer session? David and I are both here to talk about the process, the personas, how they're used, what they mean to the DDA. Bring us your questions. What you got? Or Hannah, I don't know if you want to. Yeah.
Will they be able, can they hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Please speak loud. It does pick up the audio in the room, but you need to speak loud.
So I do marketing for a salon. We try to keep it like affordable luxury. Certainly like millennials and students, it's not really affordable, but kind of like older. Out of your personas, what would you say is the most fitting for that?
I would probably look at the Thicks, Robin and Bob Thick, because you said it's luxury salon.
Yeah, I mean, we're saying like kind of like for the cheapest haircut is like $60.
Yeah.
So it's like affordable luxury. It's not like, you know, LA glam, but it's certainly not cheap.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question and really applicable. Robin and Bob Thick would be good because they have good household income and they're locals. I would also look at Patty Phelps. She's got a really badass hairdo, and she definitely spends money. She definitely spends money on her hair. So I would say she might also be a viable contender, and even maybe some of the tourist families. If either Melissa and Amanda Maurer, when they're in town. So for example, in your scenario, this would be, does the salon want to, let's say you have a finite budget, does the salon want to advertise with the CVB, or do we want to advertise in local media? This is a case for the CVB if you want to look at tourists who are coming into town that want to splurge while they're on vacation and spend a little bit of extra money on themselves. So there, I feel like you've got a couple different options there, but I would go with the Thicks, Patty Phelps, or a tourist.
Thank you.
Sure.
A clarification, there was an acronym there for those that are not familiar. CVB, Convention and Visitors Bureau. That's actually Visit Fort Collins for us.
Thank you.
Sorry, and thanks,
I
Anna.
was wondering, but I was like, maybe it's just something I didn't know. Thank you.
Of course, there was a lot of acronyms and things. If there was something that was unclear, or you have a question about, likely others have the
Yes.
same question. So please feel free to ask it.
All right, what else do we have? Anyone else struggling or trying to think of how you might want to
I have a
use
question.
the
I'm
persona?
gonna roll over here so I can be on camera. Can you see me? Where am I? There I am. So my name's Josh. I love the personas concept. I run 2 different liquor stores. One of them is in downtown Fort Collins. So a lot of these personas speak to us. I run another store to the north side of town, which is probably more struggling with its identification of the personas that are important to us. And given some regulatory changes in our state this year, we're really struggling trying to grasp what we can in a changing market. So our store up north is it's next to, it's the closest liquor store to the country club, but there's a nice middle class neighborhood right behind us. There's 3 or 4 trailer parks within spitting distance, and there's a lot of the county health and homeless and human services type services offered up there too. So we got such a wide range of people we're trying to communicate with. And the thing that speaks to me about your message is trying to communicate to everybody is not going to really get you where you want to go. But I have so many diverse people in that location that I'm afraid I'm leaving people out if I'm only communicating to some of them. So without getting too much in the weeds, I mean, how do you approach a situation that has such a diverse, demographic?
Yeah, and Dave, I don't know
I
if
can
you
field
have
this
any
one.
insights here, want to jump in. Otherwise, I can field it.
Well, when you talk about diversity, when we start putting these personas together, regardless of what they look like or what their ages are, or what their ethnicity is, we're looking to see, they represent something bigger. So do they have, if somebody has the same kind of pain points, the same kind of resources, and wants the same thing, that's a persona. So even if you've got a population that is primarily Spanish speaking, if they have the same resources as someone who is 22 years old and they're drinking the same alcohol, that's a persona there. You can look at it that way. The other thing is that you've got to consider your overall strategy. Downtown Fort Collins has a really well-defined strategy for the next few years. They know what their brand is. Without that, we wouldn't be able to put the personas together because we have to know why we're doing things. And so, yeah, it's okay to have a number of people in your personas, but you don't have to think of them just by age, ethnicity, gender. It's more about what they want, what their opportunities are. When it
comes to defining what the personas are for myself, for my other store, my gut feeling is to just kind of get real granular and just scoot through some sales reports and look at this type of transaction and that type of transaction, and combine that with just anecdotal knowledge that we have about that regular customer and this college kid and that soccer mom or whatever. Is that a decent approach to kind of build this for myself?
Yeah, there is a wisdom in crowds. We do this all across the country with cities and towns of all sizes. And we usually start by talking with the organization and some of you business owners and residents. And generally, those sessions give us pretty accurate answers to start with. Personas usually start up pretty early just through that. People know a lot. So yeah, if you sit down with some of your employees and take the time to just write it out just write it out, make it a little bit of a formal process, you're probably going to get pretty close.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, Josh, to follow up on that, I think Dave is absolutely right. There's a couple of things I want to underscore there. One, the personas are very directional and aspirational. So like David was saying, common pain points can be a thread with personas. Like just because Patty Phelps has a badass haircut doesn't mean that all Patty Phelps are white and have that haircut and cool glasses. She represents a business owner looking to expand her business and has similar pain points and challenges as a business owner. So it's kind of more like looking at what threads are common between these. Two, I've gone through this process. This was a very formalized process that we undertook with downtown Fort Collins and that we do with downtowns when we're contracted to work with them. That I don't know, this took several months. There's a lot of data to sift through, but like David was saying, the personas start formulating very much at the beginning in the on-take. So I've worked with other small business owners who are friends where we've sat down and done ad hoc personas, just kind of sketching out on a legal pad. I kind of have 4 main types of customer and they look like this, this, and this. And then as a business owner, like you were saying, looking through transactions, who are my most profitable and who are the ones that I don't care? It's more about taking finite resources and applying them where you're going to get the most bang for your buck, as opposed to excluding people or including people. It's making the most out of what you have with what you have right now.
Yeah, Josh, you brought up something that I wanted to jump on as well. With downtown Fort Collins, with nonprofits, with government, they don't have a strict ROI. They've got to serve a whole community. And so that's why this process, beginning with the personas, is so important for them, because we can't just say, do what's most profitable. We really have to think about who everyone out there that we can serve, and all the things that we can do for them. So a business is going to be a little bit different because you will be looking at the personas that are most profitable first.
Right, exactly.
You don't need to
David,
speak to everyone, just the most profitable ones.
Right, David's spot on. I've been using personas for Marcom and planning for decades now, and used to work on the digital advertising campaigns for Olive Garden, Red Lobster. This is exactly the way they do planning. It's how Coca-Cola does planning. It's how Target does planning. Like next time you're watching TV or seeing advertisements or looking through any type of media, look and say, oh, there's a persona. Oh, there's a persona. This is how larger companies do this. But yeah, you know, you're spot on. What other questions do we have?
So my business is a cooking studio, which is basically a recreational cooking school, and we do date nights, and we do you know, people come and cook their dinner and eat it. Basically, it's kind of like a restaurant, but you cook your own food. And
Yes.
our personas are pretty simple. Like it's the 2 guys with the dogs, you know, that person, and the empty nesters. Across the board, that's pretty much who we get.
Yep.
But we're trying to get more into reaching the university faculty, because CSU is like one of the largest employers there is. And it seems really hard to get that group of people, because when they come in, they're like, oh, I didn't even know you were here. This is so great. I have to tell my other colleagues at my department, but they're such a untapped resource for us. And I didn't see a professor of English in there anywhere.
I just like to say at the symphony, we're doing the exact same thing.
We're
We're trying to see how we can get more CSU faculty engaged in what we do.
That is a
Yeah.
famously hard nut to crack, and I think every college town has the exact same questions, because the faculty can be very insular. They don't break out of the routine. Students definitely don't break out of their routine once they're in it. So that's probably there's enough information there that we've gone through in the past few years with college towns. There's enough for a whole session there. But once you break in, yeah, word of mouth is the way to go. I mean, whatever you can do to remind people, please tell your friends about, please tell your friends about, please tell your friends. Because the HR is not going to let you come through and advertise except through like
Right.
platforms. Social media is okay, but you're better off just supporting what students are already posting. Boosting that can be effective. But
Well,
yeah,
I don't really
there's a
want
lot
the
that goes into it.
students. I want the faculty and the admins. Like the students are not my market.
Right.
The
Right.
students'
So-
parents are my market because they buy gift certificates, but
You can sometimes, depending on the size of the school and the program, you can sometimes go to the actual like the dean's office for each individual school, engineering or whatever. And you might be able to drop off some flyers.
Or
That's kind of surface level. That's about it. Other than social media.
I think two things that you hit on though. One, you identified right off the bat that the Dink couple is one of your personas right now. And that makes absolute sense because in their subhead, you see they're all about experiential. And that's what your business, the cooking studio, is all about, experiential. So lean into them. If you were to poster things out, let's say you do have faculty come in, is there opportunity to do a check insert or a stuffer or hand them a postcard or a flyer, like for a BOGO offer, or, you know, bring a fellow faculty member? Is it possible to host faculty night and get the word out and have folks come for that? So I think focus on the experiential, but maybe there are referral programs or other tactics, tools, tactics, or technologies for meeting and reaching them. And again, there was no professor within these 10 personas because we're working with a finite amount of resources. If we were to every year build 10 more personas for downtown Fort Collins, they might be in the second round. But we really need to focus on where do we get the most bang for our buck, which is how we landed on those first 10 that we developed and used.
As well, also to jump in, Trish, to your question, how you reach them, Rocky Mountain Student Media is the resource for the university, and they've got their newspaper, they've got magazine publications, their radio, PCSU, social media, and actually we've internally been working with them to launch messaging in advance of Welcome Week, really getting in front of students and their parents and trying to promote that message. So hopefully we'll have some actual use cases working with the student media group that we can bring back and share. Maybe it's a viable opportunity and a resource for you guys.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And that's what we've seen with Tempe as well. When it's Parents Weekend, there are a lot of opportunities for merchants downtown to participate in programs. And the school wants that relationship. The school realizes the town is just as important to their existence as they are to yours.
On
Hannah,
Victoria's,
sorry.
on Victoria's persona, you used the word crunchy.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
It's like organic, like a nature girly, like stuff like chocos, like dog. Yeah.
Okay.
Very cool. Also into the caniculture scene.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, and we might have room for one or two more questions here.
And I really
Sure.
I just had a comment that I wanted to share. Remember that the faculty at CSU are not a monolith. So they are dinks. They are, you know, they do have families. They are some of these same demographics. You just might need to get to them, you know, in different communication methods. But I think they still fall into a lot of these personas. And then my only question was, again, Peggy from the Creative District, which ones do you see participating the most in kind of arts activities? I know those are, you know, there are some of the retirees, some of the, you know, where are the growth potential audiences? I know some of the ones that currently participate, but if I was to share this with other creative businesses like the Symphony and folks in town, who are our likeliest candidates for participation?
Long term. Go on, Dave. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'd be real careful because we did create, like Josh, we keep saying, we created this for downtown, not for a specific venue. And so there's no one answer here. I think I would probably have a few more personas that are a little older. Because we really only have maybe 2 that are the right age.
But we did see, one of the biggest messages that kept bubbling up, both in the research and when we spoke with you guys, was how creative downtown is. And I know that art and public art bubbled up, I think, in Melissa and Amanda Maurer. I think Melissa in particular, but there's another one as well. So I think any of the tourist families is going to resonate with them. And I think that the reload-driven middle-class visitors as well. But to underscore, yes, David is correct. We didn't develop these for an arts nonprofit. We developed from downtown, but
Well,
I would dig into those and read through the narratives on the others.
yeah, and just to reemphasize, we are the downtown Fort Collins Creative District. So we are promoting downtown as well. So we're not a specific organization, and it's not always a traditional, like a symphony or a ballet. I didn't mean that. I just was interested if there were ones that you thought were growth potentials for participating in looking at public art and, doing different kinds of creative activities. But I'll go ahead and research through this. Thank you so much.
And I
One
think
of the
Yeah,
things
no
we
worries.
noticed was Fort Collins was really unique for how much everyone loved Fort Collins, which was just normally we do this and people are have a lot of issues they want to share. Everyone loved Fort Collins. Everyone loved public art. They loved the creativity of downtown. And this was universal. Everyone we talked to really valued the arts and creativity. It's the people who it's translating that into getting them out of their door and like on the street. For a lot of them, they really valued just being outside more so than the art itself. Like that was what, so the green space, the walking around, the sites, that was what we found when it was about getting people out and motivating them. It was just being outdoors.
Great. Thank
also the
you.
live music scene was really important to the underage student advocate and to Vicky in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I have one
Okay, one
question.
last
Yeah,
question.
I'll be quick. If we already have a pretty strong like customer base and like retention with the personas that we're seeing, do you think it's more important to continue to try to strengthen those people that we know are coming back, or try at that point to try to reach other personas as well? I know you said not to reach everything, but like if we've got a good grasp on the 4 already.
I would,
Oh boy. That's
I
a
would
really
go-
that's
I
really
would go-
specific to a business. That's a
I
strategic
would
plan
go
question.
80, sorry.
Go on.
If I were the marketing manager, I would probably take an 80-20 approach, meaning it costs you more to acquire a new customer than it does to maintain an existing customer. So I would focus 80% of my efforts on nurturing the existing customers that are good customers that I know, but that doesn't mean ignoring growth in other areas. I wouldn't put all of my eggs in the growth basket and ignore my existing customers. You could move the dial up on either side of that, and I don't know the exact demographics or monetary split, how the revenues break down, but that's probably how I would approach it. It always costs you more to get somebody new, and then there's 50-50. Are they going to come back or are they not going to come back? If they don't, then that was money lost. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
And so great. Well, thank you so much. I know we're at the top of the hour here, and we want to thank you all so much for joining us from a virtual environment as well. We really appreciated all of the insights that you shared specific to how these personas outside of just the downtown development, but as a tool for downtown Fort Collins, can be collectively utilized and thought about, or at least bring inspiration to ways that you can maybe think about how personas could be a good more strategic type approach or thought process or tool in your business or marketing operations or sales operations. So please just, let us know as things come up of things that you want to talk about. We'll do our best to make sure that we're advocating as a resource for all of you. Of course, we have all of these 10 personas and their full beautiful story formats available digitally for you to use and download and study and, grab a good cup of coffee and sit for a while. And after today's session, hopefully spark some interest on how to apply those and how to think about those things, or maybe develop personas of your own. So thank you again so much for joining us, and we hope everyone has a great afternoon and hopefully have some full bellies today.
Again, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Again, we are recording the session.